Ready.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our regular meeting, Town of Truckee-Town Council, April 28th. And I do have my gavel with me today, so we're calling this meeting to order right now. Planned something ahead of time today. That was about it. Roll call, please, Judy.
Yes, Councilmember Commendatore.
Here.
Vice Mayor Klovstad.
Here.
Mayor Pallavi.
Here.
Councilmember Abrams.
Here.
And Councilmember Tierman.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to skip the Pledge of Allegiance today and move right into public comment. I have an update on public comment. Give me just a moment. So we are adding a way for public comment this evening on not just this item, but on all of our items. In addition to sending your comment in via email, that can be sent to Truckee@townoftruckee.com. We are now also taking voice public comment. It will be a voice recorder, so you can now submit public comment by text or voice by calling 530-428-6555. I'm going to say that one more time, 530-428-6555. And you can submit public comment also via email, Truckee@townoftruckee.com. Submit your comments during the item presentation, and it will be played or read during the public comment period for that item. We ask that you speak slowly and clearly in your message so that everybody can hear, because it will be rebroadcast and replayed. And then regardless of how you reach out to us, please make sure that you give us your full name first and last with every public comment. So with that, I am opening public comment for anything not on the agenda. And I believe we have a couple of those, right?
Yes, this evening we've already received two for items not on the agenda. One from Karen Schatz, and she would like council to discuss the SG cell towers that are already underway or being installed in our area. And then Colleen Dalton provided some information regarding a study that has been completed that provides council with some background impacts and information on the fiscal impacts of tourism in our community.
About some of the 5G service that I've seen a number of emails over the past couple of weeks on that. So maybe if all of council would like a summary, we can just ask staff for a quick summary on sort of what the status of all of that is at some point in the next few weeks. And it can either be by memo or if we need to have a brief council discussion or presentation on it. But I know we've gotten quite a few emails on that over the past few weeks. So that would be great if we just had some clarity as to what all of that means and what some of these more specific concerns are. With that, I'm going to move into our presentations for this evening. We have two presentations, and I'm going to go back. Sorry, working off multiple screens again. Let me get to this one. And no, that's not it. Sorry. Bear with me. Okay. So first we have Building and Safety Month. I'm having a few technical difficulties. Okay. So it's Building and Safety Month. So I'd like to read a proclamation for Building and Safety Month, and then we will pass it off. Is there anybody who's accepting this or anything like that? Or am I reading this to anybody? Judy?
Dan West will be accepting that.
Great. Thanks, Dan. So, whereas the town of Truckee is committed to recognizing our growth and strength depends on the safety and economic value of the homes, buildings, and infrastructure that serve our citizens, both in everyday life and in times of natural disaster. And whereas our confidence in the structural integrity in the buildings that make up our community is achieved through the devotion of vigilant guardians, building safety and fire prevention officials, architects, engineers, builders, tradespeople, design professionals, laborers, and others in the construction industry who work year-round to ensure the safe construction of buildings. Whereas these guardians are dedicated members of the International Code Council, a US-based organization that brings together local, state, and federal officials who are experts in the built environment to create and implement the highest quality codes to protect us in the buildings where we live, learn, work, and play. And whereas safer buildings, safer communities, safer world, the theme for Building Safety Month 2020 encourages all Americans to raise awareness of the importance of safe and resilient construction, fire prevention, disaster mitigation, and new technologies in the construction industry. And whereas Building Safety Month 2020 encourages appropriate steps everyone can take to ensure the safety of our built environment and recognizes that the implementation of safety codes by local and state agencies has saved lives and protected homes and businesses. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the mayor of the town of Truckee that May 2020 is Building Safety Month and encourages citizens to join with their communities in participation in Building Safety Month activities. Done this 28th day of April 2020. Dan West, that is for you. Is he here with us? Is he on this meeting or no? No?
Saw him on there. Maybe he's having trouble with his microphone.
Oh, and I'm out of order as well, apparently. I apologize.
That's okay.
Jeez, struggling tonight. We'll open it up for public comment and any comments from the receivers afterwards. It's also Alcohol Awareness Month, and I thought this was particularly important given our current situation. And I know that our Tahoe Forest Hospital District, did we have a representative attending the meeting from there?
I think they struggled to get there to this evening, so they're not here.
Okay. Well, I wanted to just raise the awareness of this as we have all been quarantined at home, and I know there was some initial issues that our hospital district was having, so thought it was an important item to recognize. So, in the honor of Alcohol Awareness Month, I'll read the following proclamation. Founded and sponsored by National Council of Alcoholism and Drug Dependence, Alcohol Awareness Month was established in 1987 to help reduce the stigma so often associated with alcoholism by encouraging communities to reach out to the American public each April with information about alcohol, alcoholism, and recovery. And whereas alcoholism is a chronic progressive disease, genetically predisposed and fatal if untreated. However, people can and do recover. It is estimated that as many as 20 million individuals and family members are living lives in recovery. And whereas Alcohol Awareness Month provides a focused opportunity across America to increase awareness and understanding of alcoholism, its causes, effective treatment, and recovery. And it is an opportunity to decrease stigma and misunderstandings in order to dismantle the barriers to treatment and recovery, and thus make seeking help more readily available to those who suffer from this disease. And this April, the mayor of the town of Truckee would like to highlight the significant impact that alcohol and alcohol-related hospital visits have on community members that need vital hospital services during this COVID situation. And it is imperative that there be greater awareness of this serious health issue at the local level. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the mayor of the town of Truckee that April is Alcohol Awareness Month, and I urge those suffering from the disease and their family members to seek treatment. Done this 28th day of April 2020. With that, I'd like to, if we have Dan West, any comments either from him or from any other council members on our presentations before we go ahead and open public comment today? Seeing none, any council members wish to make a comment? Also seeing none, like to open public comment on the presentations. I don't think we had any. I'm going to close public
No,
comment. What's that? No.
no, we have not received any.
Great. And with that, I'd like to close public comments. Thanks, everybody. That's the end of our presentations this evening. Moving on to our consent calendar, we have we have 5 items on consent this afternoon. We have the minutes from our April 14th meeting. We have approval of a LEAP Local Government Planning Support Grant Program Funds application, approval of Build Transportation Grant Funding application, a resolution accepting Proposition 1 grant funds from Fish and Wildlife for Trout Creek restoration, and the Coldstream Road Donner Creek Structure Replacement Project contract award. So, would any member of council like to pull any of the consent items?
No.
Seeing none. Thank you. Nice to hear somebody else's voice for a second there. I appreciate that. Any member of staff like to pull anything on the consent calendar?
No.
Thank you. Any member of the public? Didn't see any public comment, so assuming that's also a no. With that, I just would like to say thank you to staff. These are all really, really awesome grant applications, and it shows that we are still moving forward in a really productive way, even though everybody's sort of working remotely and differently. I think this shows that everything is at least still on track, and we're working towards a lot of our community solutions that we've identified. So with that, Vice Mayor Klofstad, can I get a motion to approve our consent calendar?
Absolutely. And I just want to echo what you said. This represents great projects for our community and our staff developing creative ways of paying for all of them. I'm very excited to see, very proud of. So I move to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second that.
Thank you. And all. Never mind.
Councilmember Tierman, I'm sorry.
Yep, Councilmember Tierman seconded, and I know you'd like a specific roll call, so go ahead.
Yes. Vice Mayor Klofstad,
Yes.
Councilmember Commendatore,
Yes.
Councilmember Abrams,
Yes.
Councilmember Tierman,
Yes.
Mayor Pallavi.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Consent passes. Right now, in case anybody does not have our agenda in front of them, we have normally been doing our COVID update first on our agenda. This evening, this afternoon, that's been moved to second. So just for anybody tuning in from the public, we will be getting to that hopefully in about 20 to 30 minutes. So just stay tuned. And with that, I'd like to open up our public hearing. Item 7.1, intention to establish an underground utility district. Dan Wilkins?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that was a good guess. Go ahead, Dan.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, this item, I'm going to be tag teaming this because I'm in one part of Town Hall and the PowerPoint operators in another part of the building, so we'll be keying off of each other. This public hearing is the first step in creating what's called an underground utility district. What an underground utility district does is really 2 things. It states in a formal way the town's goal to place utilities underground over time in a certain geographic area. And by going through the process to create an underground utility district, what it also does is it moves the needle on the funding responsibility for placing those utilities underground slightly further towards the utility provider's area of responsibility, as opposed to just being the town's area of responsibility. So an underground utility district will have no effect from a financial standpoint on the Truckee-Town PUD. They're a municipal utility, a public utility. So UUD, Underground Utility District law, does not affect the Truckee-Town PUD. What it does affect is Suddenlink and AT&T. And by creating an underground utility district, what happens is Suddenlink and AT&T will typically have a higher level of funding responsibility when we as the town are taking the lead on a utility undergrounding project, or if our partners at Truckee-Town PUD were to be taking the lead on placing utilities underground, their electric infrastructure. It creates some financial obligations for Suddenlink and AT&T to fund utility undergrounding at the same time. So that's what the item is that's in front of you tonight. Jen, if we could advance 2 slides down from the current PowerPoint. And thanks. So the area that is shown in yellow on this slide is the geographic area that staff is recommending that the council begin the underground utility district formation process for. By creating the underground district, what it would mean is that any utilities that are along the areas in yellow would, when they're placed underground in the future, again, the private utilities would have an obligation to help pay for that. At the moment, we have projects that are active along West River Street and Bridge Street across the railroad tracks. So getting the underground utility district formed for those areas will help with those immediate projects in getting clarity on who's paying for what. The areas that you see on Jaboom Street and Church Street, those are areas where we anticipate in the future that we would be doing streetscape projects as well as utility undergrounding. And the thinking was to include those areas in this underground utility district at this time to save the need to go through an underground utility district formation again in the future for those other geographic areas. Jen, if we could advance 1 slide. This is a picture of West River Street. You can see the overhead utilities. The wires you see on the very top of the screen, there's like 4 wires next to each other. That's electric. And then below that, you see a couple of other black lines. That's typically Suddenlink and AT&T. So it's those lower lines that we would be getting with the formation of the underground utility district, more funding contribution to put those lower lines underground, those lines that are up on top. It doesn't, again, those are PUD lines and it doesn't change the equation for them. If we could advance a slide. So remaining steps in the underground utility district formation, if the council adopts the resolution that's recommended by staff that's in front of you right now, we would then mail that resolution to every single private property owner that's within the underground utility district boundary. We would also formally notice the utility providers. We've informally noticed them already that we were going to be proceeding with this. That provides an opportunity for all property owners and all affected utility providers to provide a comment back to the town before we actually take the final steps in the utility district formation. We would then hold a second public hearing in late June that would be the hearing where we would hold the first reading of the ordinance to create the underground district. And then in late July, we would have a second public hearing to hopefully adopt the ordinance and then make the underground utility district, put it in effect. If we could advance the next slide. So the recommendation in front of you is that we conduct this first public hearing to create the first step of the underground utility district formation and to adopt resolution 2020-13, which is declaring our intention to form that underground district. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Dan. Before we get into council questions, I'm just going to go ahead and open public comment just so we can start to get any public comment rolling that we need to. Truckee@townoftruckee.com. Or I should have written down the phone number, 530-428-6555. And with that, we're gonna open public comment officially, and then I'm gonna go to council member questions. So starting with Vice Mayor Klofstad, if you have any questions, go ahead.
No, this is a exciting next step in the development of our downtown area and the improvements that we have planned in all these areas. The only question I have, Dan, is it runs all the way up to, and I'm trying to move my screen so I can see it, all the way up to Colburn Crossing on East Jaboom Street. And do we have a lot of utility lines there?
We don't have a lot up there. I would say that's a low probability area that we would do an underground project in the future.
Okay. And then all along Truckee Way, were all of those undergrounded?
The bulk of those utilities are underground
Okay.
within that right of way.
But we don't have this included in any of the balance of those, any of those remaining ones.
Correct. I believe the overhead utilities that are, so I don't believe there's any overhead utilities in the Truckee Way right of way. The side streets, E Street and Smart Street,
Mm-hmm.
may have some overhead utilities, but those are areas where we're not anticipating we would actually be doing a project anytime,
Right. We're not
either near or long term.
We're not building any sidewalks or
Right.
doing culverts or anything like that, as well as School Street there.
Right. Right. And should we embark in streetscape projects in that area, we could create another underground district in the future to capture those.
Okay.
We were trying to hit a balance because we have to notice all the property owners along the underground district boundaries. And we were trying to hit a balance of creating the district in areas where we had either near or medium term plans, notify those property owners and the utilities in those areas, but not draw in a whole lot of property owner notification in areas that were lower probability that we would be doing a project anytime in the near future. So that's the reason for the boundary.
Great. Thank you. That's all I had.
Councilmember Commendatore, go ahead. And you guys can just, if I don't quite see you unmuting, we're just going to go Vice Mayor Klofstad, Councilmember Commendatore, Councilmember Abrams, and Councilmember Tierman. We'll keep going in the same order we've been going in.
Thanks, Dan, for presentation. I have no questions.
Jessica?
Hi, thanks. No, I appreciate the presentation as well. I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Just two questions. Understanding that this is going to be implemented incrementally over a period of time. Do we have any sense today of the total cost it build out in today's dollars? And then is this a 5 to 10 year kind of blueprint for the future? What's your best sense on that?
Yeah. So in terms of, I think 5 to 10 years is a reasonable estimate. That will depend on town town funding capacity and prioritization of downtown projects as compared to other projects in the community. So the West River Street and the Bridge Street areas, we have active projects that have funding in at least our current budget, where we're actively working on those. So that if those projects move forward and the funding holds for them, or we can find the funding for them, I would see those in the next 2 to 3 years, and the underground district being relevant in that time frame. Bridge Street, Church Street, Jaboom Street, I would say those are the ones that are more likely in the 5 to 10 year window. And I answered your second question, but not your first question, and your first question slipped my mind.
It was just sort of a ballpark idea of total cost at the end of the day once the district is complete. You know, knowing that undergrounding is an expensive proposition.
It is.
Yeah.
So for West River Street and Bridge Street, we're expecting there's in the neighborhood of $2 to $3 million worth of utility work in those areas. Church Street, Jaboom Street, Bridge Street, we haven't done any engineering work in those areas yet. I could see that. I could see those areas being in that same $3 million price range to get those utilities underground.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Dan, is there a private property owner cost associated with this creation of this district?
No.
There's none. So even going to the property once the utilities are undergrounded, that's all still taken care of by the utilities?
That's how we have done it historically. That's subject to change by the council. So when we put the utilities underground in Truckee-Town, there was a decision made to underground the service laterals as a part of the project that was funded by the public. And that was the town that provided that funding, rather than try to get each property owner to fund the cost of their underground service lateral. With Envision DPR, it was the same approach, where the town funded that underground connection from the street to the property owners. So future council or this council could choose to look to the property owners to fund those service lateral connections, and that's something that would have to be discussed when the overall utility funding strategy was being decided upon.
Great, thank you. With that, I'll open this item for any public comment, of which I know we didn't get any ahead of time. Has any come in since we've opened public comment?
No, there's been no additional public comment. Thank you.
Thank you. We will close public comment on this item and bring it back. I don't know if there's any deliberation or conversation council would like to have. Now's a great chance, and maybe just a quick either head nod in either direction if there's something you'd like to say, starting with Vice Mayor Klövstad.
Just that I think this is a great step to be taking at this time, and I'm glad to see staff is looking forward towards developing this district, and I'm in support of it. So I'm ready to move as soon as everybody else is.
Great. Any comments, Councilmember Commendatore?
Other than I am in support of moving forward with it.
Councilmember Abrams?
Yeah, completely aligned. I feel this is a great way to help streamline undergrounding moving forward. I don't see any drawbacks. So.
And Councilmember Tierman, some comments, and then a motion if you're agreeable to that.
Yeah, I agree with all of my council colleagues on this, and think this is a good thing. And I'll go ahead and make a motion that I guess we've already conducted the public hearing. So I move that we adopt the resolution of intention to establish an underground utility district in downtown Truckee, and adopt resolution 2020-13 declaring its intention to establish an underground utility district. That sounded a little repetitive, but I think that's the that's the gist.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And seconded by Councilmember Abrams. And Judy will do a roll call.
Yes. Vice Mayor Klostad,
Aye.
Councilmember Commendatore,
Aye.
Councilmember Abrams,
Aye.
Councilmember Tierman,
Aye.
Mayor Pallavi.
Aye.
That's a unanimous vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Moving along efficiently this evening. Thanks, everybody. We are now moving on to item 2.2. For everybody who's been tuning in, this has been our council COVID-19 update. We also have some action to take this evening. We're looking for a designation of town officials as authorized agents for application by non-state agencies for assistance in the event of emergency. So I'm sure we will get to that. And I just wanted to quickly just mention a few things because this is clearly still consuming everybody's lives. It's why we continue to meet like this. And it's just cause for pause and really why I wanted to do that before we get into the very nitty gritty of sort of what's happening on this front is really just take an opportunity to say thank you to our entire community. I think that so far we've been doing a really great job. I think everybody has been on board, all of our businesses, all of our residents, all of our citizenry. It's great to have an opportunity to spend more time with your neighbors, which I'm sure everybody is doing and seeing more often than they probably have in the past, to get out on some of our just amazing Legacy Trail and some of the other great resources that we have in our community. So I really wanted to just give a heartfelt thank you to our community and to everybody tuning in and watching. I know it's a tough time and it's important to recognize that, and it's important to recognize that for everybody. So we are all in this together. And with that, I will hand it over to Jeff, or Chief. Jeff is going to start us off. So Jeff, why don't you take it away?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just extremely briefly, Jen, maybe you could take that slide down because I think Chief is going to talk about something very different. So we don't want to confuse people. That's going to be my slide. So just to avoid confusion. So yeah, Chief's going to talk about the Emergency Operations Center briefly, a little update. I'm then going to talk a little bit about recovery programs and kind of business strategies. And then Chrissy and Kim are going to talk a little bit about budget and sort of town budget. And then you've got the action item to take. So Chief, take it away.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Mayor and council members. I'm going to keep mine somewhat brief tonight, being that we have a few other topics that we want to cover under COVID, but I did want to provide you some general statistics and some information that's kind of looming out there that just came out of the governor's office today and how that might be changing things for Truckee in the near future. So some overall statistics, we have 955,000 cases in the United States, 54,000 deaths. That's up from last time we were in a council meeting was 555,000 with 22,000. So it's still important to recognize there that this is a climbing issue in our communities throughout the United States. In California, there's 24,540 deaths last time. And unfortunately, now we're at 45,000 cases with 1,800 deaths. Nevada County is faring a little bit better than some of those statistics, luckily. We're at 39. 34 was at the last council meeting. 27 of those are on the east side or Truckee, and 24 from the last meeting. And then we have 54 cases last meeting for the Tahoe Forest Hospital District. 54 now and 49 from last time. I still direct our community members to mynevadacounty.com for the dashboard. There's a variety of other state dashboards out there, depending on what format you like, but they really are up to the minute data and is the best place to really watch those statistics if you're so inclined. On that, one of the things that I pushed last time was test to know more. We really need to start relying on data. When we were here last time, the state had completed 213,000 tests, and we were averaging about 9,000 a day. I'm actually happy to report that number is increased substantially. We're at 544,608 be exact, tests. I checked that right before we got onto the council meeting call, and we're up to about 24,000 a day. If you remember last time, I said the governor had established 25,000 as a benchmark for what he wanted to accomplish every single day. Obviously, we're much closer at 24,000 than we were 2 weeks ago at 9,000. And that plays right into really what the governor talked about today, was that any decisions need to be data driven. Matter of fact, his exact quote were, "Dates don't drive decisions, data does." When he's talking about data, for the most part, he's talking about testing, really getting clear pictures of what's happening in our communities. I speak with Tahoe Forest almost on a daily basis, either informally or formally, and I know that Tahoe Forest is still doing well and managing this. So as far as flattening the curve and not overwhelming the healthcare system, we're accomplishing that goal. I think we're at a really pivotal time. And last council meeting, I used the analogy of a marathon and being a mile 15, wanting our community to stay focused. That's still very much the case. There's some light at the end of the tunnel. Governor Newsom talked about kind of what he's calling his stage 2. For all our listeners and people who have tuned in, I highly encourage you to get on the california.gov website and look at his update today from the press conference, where he also spoke with the California public health doctor. They provided a ton of information, reiterated their 6 key criteria that they're looking at before they start making some decisions to loosen the stay at home. And they went into a 4-stage explanation of what that looks like. The light at the end of the tunnel is that on stage 2, which is some, I'll call them less dangerous opportunities to open some businesses and manufacturing, he referred to that as weeks, not months. So he didn't specify exactly what weeks meant, whether that's 1 or 5, but he did say weeks, not months. And then with some of the more sophisticated openings and the things that will take more adaptation to get social distancing in place, concerts, public venues, that's his stage 3 and stage 4. And he did refer to that as months, not weeks. So a lot of information there, a lot of indicators as to what he sees happening in the next weeks and months. And I highly encourage everybody to go and stay informed by watching that. That's all I have.
Thanks very much, Chief. Jeff.
Okay, thanks. Yep. Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Chief. So I'm going to talk about 2 topics, and Jen, you can go ahead and put that slide up now. Sorry for having to take it down, but that first slide. The first topic is going to be partially a reminder, but partially new information about community recovery and relief programs that the town is involved in. And I think it's very easy with all the information that gets thrown around to kind of forget the things we've done, are doing, are going to do to try to help our community recover in all ways. My second topic is going to be kind of tearing off what the chief said in terms of governor's order and the kind of a gradual health-based common sense approach that Truckee's looking at for opening up certain business opportunities and recreational activities. So first, for the relief programs, I'm going to break it into 2 parts, those for residents and those for businesses. And what you see on the slide up above is the things for residents. Council and community have seen the top 4. These are things you did literally a month plus ago. And they have to do primarily with food deliveries for seniors and for those who need it, and a little bit for pets. And that was money that the town council put in, and those programs have been going on. I don't have exact numbers, but we're generally meeting those numbers that you see in terms of deliveries and families and individuals getting meals. The last one you haven't heard about or seen, but you've actually approved it in concept some months ago, and that's the notion of some form of residential rent assistance. We, under the emergency declaration, took that a step further and are now offering emergency residential rent assistance to those who need it. The town is putting in $50,000 immediately. It is now available, or it will be available tomorrow. This is for people who've been directly impacted by COVID and are having significant difficulty paying their rent and staying in the place that they live. It's a very, very simple application, and the hope is really it's a bridging opportunity to get us through a month or so. We're also expecting an additional $93,000 of federal dollars that have been earmarked for Truckee that we have applied for and have very strong reason to believe we will get. It's going to take a month or two to get those dollars in place. So that's a second round of rent assistance. That one has an income cap of 80% of average median income in the county or below. So that one has some more strings attached. It's got federal attachment to it, but it will continue the program for certain individuals who continue to be inconvenienced or find themselves out of work and are having trouble with rent. So this is a program that we have up and running. I thank Shauna Doherty and Joanne Anders, our consultant and our housing program manager, respectively, for putting it together. So it's an exciting program. We're doing it. And if people need help, go to the town website under housing. Why don't we hit the next slide, Jen? So the next slide that we're going to look at is assistance for business. And this one comes in a number of different forms. And for the most part, the town is kind of a participant with our partners in this. You've all heard about the bottom line down at the bottom there, which is the Sierra Small Business Development Center's SBA loans. And many of you, and I think businesses, even in council members' businesses, have understood this is an important source. That continues to be a critical source. It's been refunded now. And so people are getting loans. What you may not have heard of is the one at the top, the Resiliency Fund, because it's brand new. The Sierra Business Council has been working on this for a while in general. They decided they needed to step it up and make it specific to emergency and immediate resiliency relief. And Truckee, the town, stepped in. We put up $50,000. That was matched by $50,000 from the Truckee-Tomorrow Chamber of Commerce program, which are the investors who have invested in that. And by the way, this is $50,000 not of Newtown money, but of money that we had already invested in Truckee-Tomorrow that we're moving essentially or sliding over into this resiliency fund. What this fund does is provide very small, generally called micro loans, again, for small businesses in particular that did not qualify or could not get the federal dollars, but are hurting because of COVID and are trying to survive during this time when they're closed or are highly limited. It's a $10,000 to $25,000 microloan program. And the town and Truckee-Tomorrow, we're happy to be partners. We applaud the chamber and we applaud the Sierra Business Council for their sort of foresight in putting this together. And we stepped right in. We are hoping that that will then allow for other public investors. Other agencies have expressed interest, and then many, many private parties have expressed interest in donating money to this fund to keep it going. The concept here is that this resiliency fund would be available into the future. Someday, if there's a wildfire, there would be a resiliency fund. It's a good idea to have this, and this was the time to start it. The second thing you see here is sales tax. This is something the state, of course, required of us. It's not something that the town did voluntarily, but what it does do is it leaves money in the pockets of businesses on a pretty substantial amount. And you see the amounts there over a 12-month period. Unfortunately, what that also does is takes that out of the town's budget. And Kim will talk about that, or Chrissy when they talk budget. And finally, the third one there is the Truckee Lodging Recovery and Awareness Campaign grants. I won't go into the details of the Truckee Business Improvement District. Our mayor can do so far better than I, but it's an assessment of the lodging community, and they have chosen on their own to take a portion of the money that they've had set aside for various kinds of marketing and other kinds of activities, and instead grant them back to their own lodging communities. So the people who put the money in are getting some of the money back on the basis of the transit occupancy tax that was paid. So that's an opportunity. It's available to all forms of lodging that paid transit occupancy tax from January to, I believe, the end of March of this year. So that's a substantial amount of business relief available, and it comes in lots of creative packages, none of which hits the general fund, except for the fact that we are, of course, losing out on those important sales tax dollars. But that's something the state is doing across the board. So that's all I have on the relief and recovery programs, but we wanted to put them out there because we continue to get a lot of inquiries. We know people are suffering, and we're trying to be judicious because of not spending taxpayer dollars. At the same time, we recognize people are suffering and they need help, both residents and businesses. Finally, my second topic, and Jen, maybe we can take that slide down just to Yeah. My second topic has to do with the question that's on sort of everyone's mind who either runs a business or is employed or isn't employed at the moment and wishes they were. And that is, what's going on with being able to recover, start back up. The chief began that conversation. It still all derives from the governor's order, but we have been moving in the background to try to get us ready to be able to support businesses when the time is right and we can move. And a couple things have happened. There is a survey out on the streets. It's been out since late last week. We surveyed all businesses in Truckee. We've gotten over half back already. It's going to stay alive until April 30th, and it's on our website. And that is a survey asking business what kind of problems they're seeing, how many people they have kept on, how many they've laid off, what are their major needs. And in particular, it asks, what is it going to take to be able to reopen and recover when that time is appropriate? And will you be able to do that with proper physical distancing, et cetera? So that survey's out there. We've gotten 150 back. Thank you very much, businesses, for doing that. Keep it up. We want to get every business to weigh in because we really want to hear what business wants. We can do our best to try to understand what the recovery looks like, but we'd rather hear it from the people who need to recover. Second thing we're doing in that regard is we're starting some focus groups the beginning of next week, and these will be more intense conversations done on a format like this with select individuals from different sectors. So the lodging sector, the food and beverage sector, the retail and outdoor outfitter sector, and we'll be trying to ask those questions in much more detail. What are the specifics about your ability to plan for your next move? And then finally, the last thing I will say is the town department head team has been working with our partners, particularly the hospital, and also with our colleagues in Eastern Placer County who have an awful lot in common with we do in terms of the kind of visitation we're seeing and we're going to see, and the kind of businesses, lodging businesses, tourist businesses, community businesses that they run. Been working with our partners to try to come up with a common sense approach for Truckee. Rather than simply wait and stand back and wait for the state to tell us what to do or Nevada County Public Health to say, well, this is what you can do, we want to be more proactive. And so we've been not only making inquiries, but coming up with ideas. Can't share those with you right at this moment, but the concept is a very common sense based strategy for being able to move when the window exists to do so, and we think that window is relatively soon. So we don't think we're talking about a great deal of time. We're trying to do better than simply saying weeks. We're trying to say which week. We're not quite there yet. We're not quite there. We know that there's going to be plenty of limitations, physical distancing, different ways of having to approach businesses. Businesses seem very, very amenable to doing that. And I think that's really going to be the key, is a very strategic and logical and structured way to return to a new normal. It's not going to be the normal we're all expecting, but a new normal. So I wanted just to give a little bit of hope on the horizon there without, overdoing it, because we're not in charge here. We know that the state is, the public health officer is, but we're doing our part in the background and appreciate all the business support and business help and also customers and residents. So that's all I've got. Thank you very much. And I think I'm turning it to Kim or Chrissy. I'm not sure which.
Kim is going to speak first. So as usual, I get to be the one who talks about the not so great news, and that is the financial risks or financial impacts that we're seeing right now. As Jeff mentioned, of course, we are going to have a significant reduction in our sales tax and our transient occupancy tax, that's for certain, for the period from March until sometime in the future. And we don't really know what that is, when that is, or what those exact amounts are, but we're talking about probably a couple of $1 million over this period of time. So obviously that's 10% of an annual budget and has some real impacts on us. What we don't have a very good crystal ball on is what's happening in the middle, in 6 months, in a year, in 2 years. Are we going to have reductions in property tax values? And property tax is the biggest town revenue source, of course, and that would have the most impact on us as an organization. So from a financial standpoint, at this time, we're preparing for the worst. We're hoping for the best. We're trying not to be reactionary, but we're trying to be measured but smart about the recommendations that we're making to you as the council, to what changes we're making in order to be able to save our cash, in the hopes that we have enough if we see some downturn similar to what we saw in the 08 to 10 recession. And we will definitely need to make some operating and capital changes if we do follow that similar model. So as you all have heard, we've already made some changes. We have suggested to council, and you have agreed to do a short-term budget for the summertime, July 1 to September, because we just can't plan for the longer term right now without having better data. We have essentially are not going to hire new employees unless we absolutely have to. We have canceled employee travel. That's pretty obvious. Our existing employment contracts will dictate that there would be no pay for performance increases for employees. So we're doing multiple best practices that we've done in the past, unfortunately, in the last recession, and that have been suggested to us by our professional organizations. And another big area that we continue to look at is our capital projects, which of course take large chunks of funding. And so as you saw tonight, we've moved forward with a couple of projects that did not use sources that could otherwise be used for town operations, but projects that have sources like the general fund, like Measure V, like Measure R, that are directly affected, we're going to really hesitate before we move forward with those, at least in the short term. And then we have other funds that also have relationships to general fund funding, et cetera. So we're just being very conservative, keeping our hopes up that the effect will not be as great as it was when we went through the last recession. I'm sorry for the cat. And and that we'll come out of this fiscally healthy, because that is our obligation, to be able to continue to provide the essential services to our community and provide future councils and future staff with a fiscally viable town. So that's all I have on that. And Christy is going to talk about an action we're going to ask you to take to put us in line to possibly receive some funding. So I'll move on to Christy.
Thank you, Kim. Good evening, Mayor and Council. The last piece of the item tonight, number 3 in the staff report, is an administrative item. I have been working very closely with Sergeant Womack in our Emergency Operations Center, and the town is required to have a form on file with the State of California Office of Emergency Services. We need a resolution on file with Cal OES that identifies town staff as authorized agents to essentially sign the documents needed to be able to submit for reimbursement of eligible expenditures for state assistance. You'll notice, or you may have noticed, the form is not specific to this one disaster or emergency declaration. This form would be good for a 3-year period. So should there be another emergency declaration within the next 3 years, this resolution would remain intact. The resolution that we've prepared suggests having the town manager be the primary authorized agent, and in his absence, the administrative services director. As I mentioned, this is a form that it is designed by Cal OES and in the form that is required by them. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. This has no direct fiscal impact at the moment, but of course it will allow us to file for reimbursement of those eligible expenditures in the future.
Thanks, Chrissy. Are you done?
Yeah. And that's it.
Great.
Back to you.
Great. Thank you to all of you. And I think it's just worth repeating a couple of things here, especially for everybody watching, that, just to let you know kind of what's going on and how we're all handling this. But one is that we really do expect continued visitation as we get into summer. And I think we're all starting to see that already. And our community approach really needs to help manage that increase in population. And so I'm going over just a couple of these points, just mostly for the public's view, so they also can kind of get a added flavor of what's going on here, since some of us are living and breathing this literally every minute of all of our days right now. And what Jeff was talking to is we're actively strategizing on more of a proactive plan to deal with all of this. And I think that's important for our community to know, and to know that what we're shooting for is that it will allow for sort of a structured, gradual, health risk-based restoration of activity that is also based on data. And I think that's really where all of this is coming together, is we have to rely on the data that's out there in order to start making these decisions as we move forward, and really working in conjunction with all of our partners, both county, state, cross-county, et cetera. So, I just really want to reiterate that for the community and for all of those that are tuning in, that we're acutely aware of what's happening, and we're absolutely working really hard on a daily basis to address not just the concerns, but the opportunities as we all move forward as well. So with that, I'm going to open public comment just to give everybody a little bit more time. And I know we've already gotten at least a few, but I'm going to open public comment. Just a reminder, you can email Truckee at townoftruckee.com. You can also now call or text 530-428-6555. So that's 530-428-6555. And if you do leave us a voice or a text, just please make sure that you give us your name when you do that. With that, let's bring it back. So public comment is officially open, but let's bring it back for any Yep, sorry. Is somebody trying to get my attention that I didn't see? No. I'm going to bring it back for any council member questions at this point, and we might as well we'll just do questions right now. If you have any specific questions for any staff on this topic, and or any other more general questions that you'd like to get some more answers to as we continue to move through the pandemic and everything that encompasses. So with that, I will hand it over to Vice Mayor Klovstad.
Thank you, Mayor Pallavi. I know we've all had a lot of constituent correspondence about all of this lately. And one of the continuing themes I see is, why is the number of cases going up and then back down again in Nevada County? And so I'm wondering if Chief or somebody would like to give the best example or the best reasons why for the public.
I'm not really sure what they're referring to be quite honest with you. There was a period of time last week where the dashboard didn't reflect the accurate math of adding the two numbers together, but they've never gone back up and back down. If you looked at east and west, those numbers were always correct. The total was off by 2. And that was midweek last week, but I'm not sure what exactly they're referring to when they say going back up and down. Is that meaning that we were flatlined for so long? Why are we all of a sudden getting some positive tests?
No, I think we had we had gone up in numbers, and then there were then they reduced the number of cases, and so that still reflects on the website. And so what I've been telling people is that they reported those cases and then realized that they were actually outside. They resided outside the county, so that's why the adjustment happened. Is that
correct? That could be it, and that does happen. That particularly at Tahoe Forest Hospital, is that they'll refer that to the public health department of the county that they reside in.
There's that concern of, well, what are they really reporting, and do we really have all the data? And I just want to reassure the public that That's probably why we saw that number go up and then back down, because they are really trying to be proactive and report as quickly as possible. But then sometimes we realize those people actually don't reside in Nevada County. So I think that's important for people to keep in mind. And then not so much of a question, but I just want to reiterate what you were saying, Mayor. I think we're all seeing the increase in activity, and the best thing our community can do is to continue to do what they have been, which is protect themselves and their families, wear their masks, wash their hands, stay home when they can, because there will be increased activity in our community, regardless of what we want to do or say about it. That's it for me.
Thank you, Anna. Councilmember Commentori.
Thank you, town staff, for all your hard work. I don't have any questions, mostly because I feel like we've been talking about it so much. I think most of the questions I would have had have been answered over the course of, well, just the course of time. But thank you guys, and thank you.
Go ahead, Jessica. You don't have to wait for me.
Okay, thanks. I thank you so much to town staff for all of the tremendous effort and work that's gone into all of this. I think my question and or request is best directed to Chief. And I've been on the Nevada County website on a daily basis, and also, watching the number of cases, and we see right now it's saying 41 with 1 death. And I've seen in other places, they're also reporting on the number of cases that have recovered. And I haven't seen anything around how many people, are these 41 cases still active? Has anyone recovered from it in Nevada County? Why aren't we seeing who's actually getting better? And if that's not, I know it might not be your jurisdiction, but is there a way to kind of put in a request on, can we also find out, let's get some of the positives too, let's see these numbers drop because people are healing from it. And right now on the website, it appears that no one's actually recovered from it yet in Nevada County, or it's just not reported.
Yeah, so the reporting is the numbers that have tested positive. It doesn't break it down into who's recovered. Obviously, we can tell with that one statistic as to who's passed away from it. That might be an interesting dynamic to have that on the county website. I think if I had to answer for them, what they're hesitant to do is to list that number, because I think there's a lot of speculation on a national level right now about how many people have had it and didn't even seek treatment. And so we don't want to be disingenuous by presenting a number that have been hospitalized and recovered or tested positive and then turned out fine, because frankly, with the testing being as low as it has been for the last week and a half, I don't think we know that number. As we progress into future weeks, if we continue down the trend, as I mentioned earlier, of conducting 24 to 30,000 tests per day, I think that picture becomes much more clear, but I would imagine that's the hesitation.
Okay, yeah, it's logical, but it would be nice to see, because that's kind of the positive angle of everything, is that people are recovering. So to get that too, I don't know. That would be possible, but I respect your response. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. And then just to make sure I'm clear with you, I don't get that information either. I don't have any idea about how many have tested positive and then recovered. I can tell you Tahoe Forest is healthy. We have a minimal amount of patients that are still inpatients within the hospital for COVID. That's a very positive sign that we haven't had people dying from the disease or remaining in the hospital to the point where we've overrun their COVID unit.
That's wonderful to hear. Thanks. I don't have any other questions. Thanks, David.
Yeah, I just have a couple of specific questions. And before I get to those, just want to echo what everyone else has said about, expressing gratitude to the tremendous team effort at the town of Truckee, to all of our partners, to all of the collaboration going on throughout town. So fantastic to see. And again, another testament to what kind of community we are. So my two specific questions, one maybe for Jeff, the programs that we're contributing to, a number of them had to do with providing meals, food assistance. There's been a lot of social media discussion about the meals that are being served out of downtown. I think it's at the station. Is that one of the programs that we're contributing to? I heard or saw that over the weekend they served hundreds of meals to community members. So I was just curious about that. If you know anything about that program.
Yeah, I'm going to actually look. I don't know if that's one of the programs that we contributed to. Specifically at the station, that may be yet another program. But I'll look to any of my colleagues who may have been part of that one.
That
Boys
is
and Girls Club.
That is
Not
not
ours.
one. Yes.
Yeah,
But
that was
Boys and
that
Girls
was
Club
mine.
and Sierra Community House.
Yeah, so that's yet another one.
Okay. Yeah, I was curious about that. And then on the with respect to the lodging community, are we getting any feedback from the lodging community? I'm talking primarily about the hotels in town in terms of TOT deferrals, anything along those lines.
Kim,
Yeah, I'll look to Kim on that one for TOT.
and
I can take that one also, or David, David Pallavi, do you want to do that?
maybe just correct me if I'm wrong or if I speak or you have anything to add, but I think what we are seeing from the lodging properties or part of their relief fund was contingent on time transit occupancy tax payment. So our third quarter, which is January, February, and March. Yes, January, February, and March, the payment for those is due on May 1st. And in order for the lodging properties to have qualified for their emergency relief fund that they specifically set up through the TBID, they had to pay their Q3 remittance on time. And so I think most are doing that. Kim, maybe you can speak to anybody or how many deferrals we're asking for. And then we will have a lot more information. We have not had an emergency TBID meeting, I think, in this entire 2 weeks. So we will have a TBID meeting on May 6th, and we'll obviously have a lot more feedback and understanding of what's happening in that sector as we get through that meeting. Kim, how many deferrals or anything else you want to add to that?
I expected a significant level of deferral requests, and that has not happened. We've had very few people make that request, and then since the TBID program went into effect, letting folks know about that is pretty much negated any deferral requests. So people were paying at a relatively the same level they were in other quarters from what we were seeing. And, it may just be that some who were under stress hadn't quite paid yet. But yeah, it's just going along fairly normally, although at reduced levels for many businesses.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you both. No more questions for me.
Great, thank you. And I don't have any questions at this time. I do know that, there's another right at the end of this, but Jeff and I will be meeting with Dr. Ken Cutler along with our other mayors from Grass Valley, Nevada City, as well this coming Friday to hopefully get some more clarification and we obviously bring that back to the community as soon as we do. So with that, let's do some.
Do you have one?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
You have one comment, Judy. That was Judy. Sorry.
Yeah, and I've got 3 that came in earlier.
Okay, well, why don't we start with Jeff and then we'll go to any that have come in. So officially, public comment is open. Truckee at townoftruckee.com, 530-428-6555. Any of those methods work. Jeff, go ahead with the public comment right now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. These are all 3 public comments that came in prior to about 3 o'clock today. Council members have seen the full text. They're fairly lengthy, so I'll try to summarize. The first one, I'll get right to the request. Town council should vote to require essential workers and residents to wear face coverings when they are outside of their homes for essential needs and in public settings, and request County of Nevada to defer to the town of Truckee for self-determination in this essential and unique public health determination. The rationale, as we prepare for future lifting of shelter in place in tandem with social distancing, it's imperative for each citizen to protect each other by wearing a face covering, which can be manufactured, or homemade mask, bandana, scarf, et cetera, et cetera. Such behavior will prevent this virus from being transmitted, as such a simple covering will help prevent people, including those who are unaware they are sick, from transmitting the virus. And then there's some additional good information on that one. A second comment came in. It has a preamble, which I won't get into, but it's very complimentary of our council and the hard work you're doing. But I'll get right to the request. Number one, consider this a teeter-totter time with clinical public health on one side and a myriad of other public health issues, including economic survival, on the other. It is horribly complicated. I would not want to be in your shoes. That said, politics have been placed on this theoretical teeter-totter, and it will only complicate things. Making data-driven decisions is the key. Number two, there's going to be a backlash and resistance to whatever action or inaction you take, regardless of timing. The business community has been unusually, actually responsibly and respectfully quiet, but consistent with the Truckee way, no surprises. There are calls for progress. I can't speak for everyone in the business community, but I personally put everything on a risk-benefit continuum. There are risks, yes, but with well thought out, pragmatic guidelines, could the benefits outweigh the risks? That is not something that can be answered today, tomorrow, or next week, but I'm urging you to use all of your power of your elected authority to consider objective criteria in framing policies as we recover and ultimately normalize. And then finally, number three, along a similar vein, from a small business owner, my wife and I operate 3 wine bars and 2 restaurants across North Lake Tahoe and Truckee. I can imagine you are under a lot of pressure, and I don't mean to be insensitive to that. We need a timeline for reopening. The continuous, I'm not sure, I don't have an answer, is counterproductive, and basically as a county, we aren't moving forward. I'd prefer to avoid all the rhetoric of science data, but at the end of the day, the curve has flattened and the hospitals are not overwhelmed. It appears to me we've done our job well, and by no means am I saying this pandemic is over, but we cannot keep extending the shelter. At this point, the community is practicing caution, following all guidelines from the CDC. It is time to let those who aren't compromised or sick go back to normalcy, and those who should continue to shelter in place. Thank you for your consideration. So those are the 3 that came in earlier on this item in general.
And Jeff and or Judy, is it appropriate, since we've been asking for people's names and we normally have some color to wrote us those comments at the podium, do you mind just going in order 1, 2, and 3 and comments?
Yeah, no problem. Thanks. I should have done that. The first one about the masks and facial coverings was from, I'm looking at an email. Oh, here it is.
It was from Phyllis. Yeah.
Phyllis Mati, a 26-year resident of Truckee. The second one was from Jim Winterberger from Tahoe Getaways. And the third that I just read was from Chris Barkman.
Thank you so much. And Judy, go ahead.
We have a public comment that came in via text from Matt Johnson of Truckee. He says, why are some Truckee restaurant employees not wearing masks nor gloves and not adhering to the 6-foot rule? End of comment.
Thank you. That was Jennifer, I believe. Thank you. And with that, no other public comment that I've seen come through, at least on my end. So I'm going to close public comment. And maybe, this face covering issue has definitely been top of mind, I think, for a lot. Chief, do you mind rejoining us and maybe at least giving us your expert opinion on specifically on the face covering issue?
Sure. So I can't speak to the science around the face covering versus respirator versus the surgical mask. I mean, they're very different. That's better left for the healthcare professional. What I can talk about is the enforcement of that and really the level of justification for what would come with a mandate to wear it. I know San Francisco, just I think today or yesterday, has gone through that. The way that I balance these things is first and foremost, enforcement, as I've always said, is reserved for the egregious or the continuous problem. So we had a very egregious issue with somebody coughing in public, intentionally coughing on people, trying to make some kind of a political point. Certainly, we would look to enforce something through a health and safety code that public health had given us the opportunity to do that with face covering ordinances or laws. When we look at mandating the public to do anything, there's a scale, a sliding scale, and I look at people's civil liberties and ability to make decisions on their own. And to oppose something on them, you have to reach a same level of justification. And so those have to rise and lower together. I'm not sure where that bar is. I have not seen the science, and I think it's still, I will call it very proactive to make face coverings mandatory, to make it a criminal issue for us not to be wearing face coverings. I think it's highly recommended. We've already seen that. If people choose not to do it, that's their personal choice. So as a community, if we get to the point where we wanted to mandate that, I would be very, very cautious and would advise council to balance the justification from a public health perspective before mandating that the community do anything that was not their own free will.
Thanks very
We
much.
may want to, Mayor, you may want to hear from, we may want to hear from Andy on that.
Oh, okay. Andy?
Oh, there we go. So it's not really clear that cities, as opposed to counties, have the authority to adopt face mask orders. So San Francisco did it, but San Francisco is a little bit weird because it's both a city and a county. City of LA did it, but they have their own public health department. There are only a handful of cities in the state that have public health departments, and those are the ones that are mostly doing it. I have become aware that there are about half a dozen, at least, smaller cities that have done it. I just can't tell you that if we did it, it would be enforceable or legal. It's just one of those where in some cities, the pressure for local action has gotten to the point that they've taken the plunge, regardless of whether they actually have any authority to do that. So as Chief Leftwich said, if the council were inclined to go that path, just be very cautious and understand that in addition to some practical difficulties with enforcement, it's not entirely clear that there's really any authority for it.
But I will add that we are strongly recommending that people consider that when they're with other people not in their household and businesses as well, just as a good practice, because it is. Whether or not I'm not an expert on viruses either, but it seems pretty clear that it is an appropriate thing to do. We're not going to be enforcing it at this point, but we strongly think it makes sense, and we've been messaging to that effect.
Yeah, great. I would agree, and I believe Nevada County Health has also been messaging to that effect as well. If you're out in public, it's best practice to use a face covering, but clearly not something that at least the town of Truckee is requiring at this point.
I have a quick question on that, Mayor.
Sure.
Probably back to Andy. So I understand we as a town don't necessarily have that authority, and we haven't seen that come down from the county, but could a business itself adopt that practice and say, refuse service to somebody who is not wearing a mask?
Yeah, absolutely. Businesses can certainly do that, and a number of them have.
Okay, great. So I think that's something that we could encourage businesses to do in order to protect both their employees and their customers.
Sure.
Great.
Thank you.
Did we get any more public comment? Did I already close public comment? I apologize.
I believe you closed public comment, but we also have not received any more.
Even better. Great. Thank you. With that, I'm going to bring it back. We'll save any sort of COVID-related communications or meetings that everybody's had, maybe to council reports at the end, in order to keep all of this going. But again, I think if there's a message, that everybody can take from this, and especially those watching, it's really that we are absolutely being strategic and being proactive on addressing all of the issues that are before us, whether that's business reopenings, whether that's our community's health, whether that's our increased visitation. And these are all top of the mind priorities for all of us right now. And I know that you see us working on a lot of these other projects and other agenda items, but COVID-19 is certainly pretty much the number one priority, and something I think many of us are spending well more than 90% of our time on right now, at least between council members and department heads and staff, as we also move all of this forward. So a really big thank you to our community once again for being really strong in this very challenging time. And I encourage you to keep it up and keep the stay at home order in your mind as we move through this. And with that, I don't know if there's anything else anybody wanted to mention, please do. And maybe we'll just continue on in order. And otherwise, we do have one action item on this agenda item. So any others, anything else that you wanted to mention, Vice Mayor Klostad?
Thank you, Mayor. I did just have the thing I wanted to mention, and I think it's actually summarized well by Jim Winterberger's comment. Any backlash, we will receive backlash on any action or inaction. And so we are going to be data driven and utilize objective criteria and all the decisions that we're making. And I think that's really clear in the staff reports. Reading through them, every single staff report has a justification statement for why we're considering this now, why it's important to have council vote on this now. And for me, that's very helpful in clarifying that that is the forefront of all the decisions we're making right now at the town. And so I just really want to thank staff for that, for those insights, and that's been really helpful. I hope it's helpful for our community as well. It really is the primary point of all of our decisions right now.
Councilmember Commendatory.
Yeah. So it's kind of want to thank those who took the time to give us public comment, because a couple of those or all of those have been pretty in depth and well thought out. And I will say this as only one town council member and as a small business owner, it's very important to me to be moving forward as we can and where we can, using data to open up things, whatever that looks like down the road. But doing it smart is a big piece of that. But the reason why it's important to me is, there's an economic aspect, but there's also a mental health aspect. And so I think we as a town council, and I'll speak for all of us to the public, is that we all understand that there is other factors involved. It's not just getting the economy going. It's not just staying home and staying safe. There's so many other things that are in the area between those that we are really trying to be pragmatic. Town staff is really trying to find ways to understand the situation and be creative. So I think it's not one side or the other. We're going to find the middle ground that makes sense for our town. So I have nothing else to say on that. Thanks, Dave.
I would just echo what my other council members have said as well. I don't have anything that's substantially different to add, and I agree completely.
The exact same for me. So, once again, thank you everybody for all the hard work, and yeah, nothing further to add.
Great. How about a motion, Councilmember Turner?
Yeah. Was that an applause that we were hearing? I'm not sure.
That was my paper, sorry.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and move that we adopt resolution 2020-29 designating the town manager and administrative services director as authorized agents for application by non-state agencies for assistance in the event of emergency.
Second.
I think that was Vice Mayor Klostad second.
Yes.
And roll call, G.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Klostad?
Aye.
Councilmember Commendatory?
Aye.
Councilmember Abrams?
Aye.
Councilmember Tierman?
Aye.
Mayor Pallavi?
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much, everybody, on that. And that we will move on to item 7.3 to amend chapter 14.01 of the Town of Truckee Municipal Code regarding aquatic invasive species. I believe either Chief Lethwich or Devery are with us for this one, most likely. Maybe.
Yeah, she's there. She's just muted.
I
There she
apologize.
goes.
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members.
Okay, here we go.
At the April 14th council meeting, staff was directed to amend the aquatic invasive species ordinance. We spent a majority of that time discussing the fiscal impacts to the general fund. However, I would like to discuss the details of the amendment in more detail. The amended ordinance now states that the watercraft owner will be conducting the self-inspection to receive a 2020 Donner Lake sticker prior to launching. The owner will need to conduct a self-inspection if they launch at any other body of water before they can re-enter Donner Lake. So if they launch at Donner Lake and then the next day they go to Boca, they need to do another self-inspection, fill out that form, and have that current form in their vessel at all times. All protective measures of the previous AIS program remain in place. So that being said, let me explain what those measures are. Tahoe Donner Homeowners Association and the Donner Lake Homeowners Association, their launches remain gated. So they are closed when staff is not there. And the town will continue to subsidize Rec and Park for our coverage between Memorial Day and Labor Day weekend, making that 12 hours from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., 7 days a week. And we will continue to test the water for villagers. I will also work alongside with Tahoe Donner, Donner Lake, and Rec and Park, which I've done in previous years, to train their staff. So all frontline staff at the launches will be looking for a current Donner Lake sticker or a Lake Tahoe sticker. If the vessel doesn't have this, that launch staff will inform them of the process of obtaining the sticker and the decontamination process if that is needed. And our decontaminations will still be conducted by Tahoe Resource Conservation District at the Truckee Water Station site, which is located at the Truckee-Town Airport tarmac. We will be educating and empowering these watercraft owners to conduct the inspections. They'll have a better understanding of what AIS is and why it's important to protect our lake. I like to hear a great analogy would be you go to the dermatologist, you have them check you for skin cancer, any skin and for abnormalities. That person now knows, they're educated, they can now check themselves and they can look for those. And then they have a better understanding of what they're looking for. They'll probably, they'll look more often. They're understanding why it's important to do those checks. The Truckee Watercraft Station usually does open in mid-May. However, with the current COVID-19 pandemic, this might not open until June or later. They are trying to open up as soon as they can, but we're kind of playing it week by week at this point. So I'd like to point out that until we have a closed loop system at Donner Lake, conducting either a mandatory inspection conducted by TRCD staff or a mandatory self-inspection, they're both providing a reasonable amount of protection to the lake. So with that said, the staff is recommending action to waive the first reading and introduce the ordinance 2020-03, amending chapter 14.01 of the Town of Truckee Municipal Code regarding the AIS.
Thank you, Devery. And I'm going to open public comment on this item. So once again, Truckee at townoftruckee.com and or text or voice to 530-428-6555. And you can leave a voicemail there. Just make sure to leave your name as well on that one as well. So we're going to open public comment. Sorry. Did you want to say something, Dev?
I was just going to say I had one public comment come in earlier today that I'll summarize for you guys now. If that's
so
all right.
We'll let it all come in and we'll go to council member questions if anybody wants to chime in on any public comment at the moment. And then we'll go through public comment after we get through with council questions. So with that, Vice Mayor Klostad.
No, I think we went through this in pretty great detail last time. I do just want to clarify, Deborah, that the Donner Lake boat launch, when you said it's not going to open till mid-June, it's you mean it's not going to be manned until mid-June to have people check for that sticker, correct?
No, I apologize for the confusion. The Truckee Watercraft Inspection Station usually opens mid-May. That will now be pushed into June, if not later. And then the Truckee Donner Rec and Park staff they staff the public boat launch beginning Memorial Day weekend.
Okay. Yeah, because it's open and boats are out right now.
Yeah,
They've been self-inspected or otherwise or not. And at this point, the ability to go back and reconsider the gate that was not installed, is there any opportunity still to do that was previously funded and we didn't do, and now we gave the money back?
Definitely. We'd have to work in collaboration with Rec and Park. It is their launch and their property, but we've had constant communication with them and their support with this program for the years past.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And I'll add to something just to make sure. I know this is a sensitive topic. The gate was never funded. We gave back a construction grant that had to do with an inspection station. It had nothing to do with installing the gate. That was a hope and the direction we were going, but was never a funded item.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thanks for report. I have no questions at this time.
Jeff and I went over this topic in our call earlier today, so I don't have any additional questions. Thank you.
My only question is kind of a follow-up to what Anna was just asking about the gate. What was the cost estimate for the gate?
The gate itself is fairly inexpensive, ranging from probably $5,000 to $15,000. It's the software programming that's going to be the expensive part, because we do want to be able to give boaters access before and after hours and 7 days a week. So year round. So that could be up to $70,000 plus for the software, and then annual maintenance costs for that.
Okay, so you said 15 for the gate and possibly another 75 for the software program?
Correct.
All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Sorry to butt in, just to make sure also. Part of the complexity there is we don't manage the boat ramp. That lease is from the State Lands Commission, which is Rec and Park. So we would obviously need another community partner to agree to the installation. When we looked at this the first time, our very ingenious Public Works Department was pretty convinced that they could weld and construct the gate. It all has to do with bringing internet access and the actual system that needs to be installed to allow, as Deborah said, the after hours and off-season access.
Okay, thank you.
Great. I don't have any questions either. So let's go back. Let's continue with public comment. It's already open. So Dev, were you going to read the public comment for this item, or is that going to?
It was pretty lengthy, so I'll summarize it for you guys. Right. So the commenter felt that the staff did not conduct the appropriate amount of community outreach for the amended AIS program. The amended ordinance would substantially reduce the protection of the lake, stating that the boating community would not be able to effectively inspect their vessels.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We have not received any voice or text or email since you opened public comment.
Great. And that original public comment was authored by Jan Zabriskie, and I believe all council members have a copy of that. You don't let us know. Great. Seeing no other public comment, I'm going to close public comment at this time and bring it back for any further deliberation by council and or discussion or questions. And maybe Chief or Devery, could you maybe just go toward, maybe just to address the commenters' communications about community outreach and stuff, maybe just let us know. I know we talked a lot about this last time, but for anybody new who's tuning in who did not catch this agenda item when we did it 2 weeks ago. Just a very, very brief summary of some of the community outreach and how we got to where we are today, I think, in a very brief way would be great. And then, yeah, that was the one piece that I just was hoping we could go back over.
Of course. So the town, we continuously collaborate with our partners, that being Tahoe Resource Conservation District and the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency, as well as Truckee-Town Rec and Park District. Since the inception of the program, we've had meetings at the beginning of the boating season, at the end, so we can figure out the challenges, what were our successes that season, how we can make the next year a better success. Within knowing that our grants expired in December of 2018, we had multiple meetings with all of these agencies to really come together and figure out a long-term sustainable plan for this program. So we ranged from conference calls to in-person meetings. We had probably, I couldn't even count, probably upwards of 20 meetings with them, just trying to get the information out, trying to gather and be collaborative about it. And then with our boating community, we have our hotline, we have our website, and then we have our boat launch staff and community outreach that we do at events. So we have constant communication. I have a lot of actual the fishing companies. I've had them reach out to me at the beginning of each season just to kind of check in. So I feel like we have a good pulse on what the boating community is doing, especially the locals. Chief, did you have anything to add on that?
Nope, perfect. And then I think the second part of that was just the idea of how we kind of got here really quickly. Is that right, Mayor?
So we got to our options by all of our meetings and trying to come up with the best sustainable plan, but still protecting the lake. We want to keep this program going, even though our grant funds expired. This is something that's important to us and to our community, and we recognize that. So we were trying to come up with options that would be sustainable and the boating community would be able to receive well. You want to add anything, Chief?
I think that's right. I do want to emphasize, and I know this is a growing concern, I recognize the importance of this program. This wasn't brought to you because of COVID and because of budgetary issues around COVID. Staff would have made the recommendation that we made at the last council meeting, regardless of the COVID crisis or not. We think that this is probably the most sustainable path at the time. Certainly, we could look at other options as we move forward in years to come, something more holistic. But this is really the only option that we have left with the feedback we've gotten from the boating community, TRPA and TRCD, and then other entities that are involved with Donner Lake. That's all that.
Great. Thank you very much to both of you for that additional information. With that, let's go. Any further clarifications or discussion, starting with Vice Mayor Klogstad?
No, thank you.
Councilmember Renfroy, go ahead.
I don't have anything else either. Thank you.
No questions. Thank you.
Sorry. I wish I could see all of you. It would make my life easier, but I keep trying to get you all on the bottom of my screen, but it puts other people there.
I just had a comment. I found the email from Jan Zabriskie to be very compelling, very detailed. He raised a lot of good points. And I think that given where this is heading and the change, at least in structure for this coming season, this is a good opportunity for us to really take the time this next year to think about this program, to think about, as the chief said, and I think as Jeff Lux has said, to think about the lake in more holistic terms and what can be done to improve its health overall. Who are the other community partners out there who might be able to participate financially? What other ways can we raise money, revenue to reenact this program, and again, maybe even expand in the long term? Because I think the health of Donner Lake, I think we all agree, is critical. It's a critical asset of our community, unlike so many other communities that don't have anything like this. So I'd say let's use this time, the coming 12 months, to really think this through and maybe come up with a framework for the long-term monitoring and health of Donner Lake.
Yeah, I would echo that very, very strongly as well. I think that's a very accurate way to put it, and something that we could look forward to as we move into the next year.
Yep.
With that, let's switch it up. How about Councilmember Commendatore? Would you mind giving us an action motion, excuse me, on item 7.3?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we waive the first reading and introduce ordinance 2020-03, amending chapter 1401 of the Town of Truckee Municipal Code regarding AIS.
I'll second.
Thank you, David. And Judy, roll call, please.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Klostad,
No.
Councilmember Commendatore,
Aye.
Councilmember Abrams,
Aye.
Councilmember Tierman,
Aye.
and Mayor Pallavi.
Yes.
The motion will pass 4-1.
Thank you, Judy. Great. Thanks. And we will move on to item 7.4. And I suspect everybody's doing okay. We're about an hour and 45 in. We can keep going. Does anybody need a break or anything? Hard to see everybody,
We're
but
getting close to being done here.
yeah. Okay, let's keep going. Item 7.4, budget amendment for miscellaneous curb and gutter replacement projects C1508. I'm guessing Dan Wilkins is taking this one.
Yes, thank you. And Jen will queue up a couple of PowerPoint slides on this as well. The item before you is actually to add some money to an existing project budget. So in your existing adopted 1920 budget, fiscal year 1920, there is $25,000 of funding in that budget for what's termed miscellaneous concrete curb and gutter replacement. That's a standing item that's been in your budget for a number of years now, and it's to deal with maintenance issues related to curb and gutter so that we can, fix them quickly. There's a section of curb and gutter in downtown Truckee that's particularly deteriorated. It's the section from Bar of America to Cabonas on the north side of the street. And with downtown being closed for business for the most part at the moment, it's our opinion that this is a good opportunity to replace that section of deteriorated curb and gutter. Something I'll point out for those who may be watching the council meeting at the moment. Earlier in your meeting, one of the consent items you approved was to award a construction contract for a significant culvert and replacement project in the Coldstream area. Your 1920 budget for that project had called for the use of $600,000 of general fund and $600,000 of Measure B funding to be used in that project. You guys were successful in substituting $600,000 of state grant funding for that project instead, as well as moving $600,000 of funding out of a more restrictive local funding source. So that effectively you freed up $600,000 in Measure B and the $600,000 in general fund from that project, which was a net positive to the overall local funding pot, at least as compared to what had been planned in the 1920 budget that was previously adopted. So what we're suggesting is that a little bit of that money in the Measure B category be moved over to this project, which would allow us to, we hope, replace the curb and gutter for that block that I described, or half block that I described a moment ago. If you could advance the slide, Jen. Thank you. This is a picture of a couple of the more deteriorated areas that we're talking about, but there's a fairly long stretch of curb and gutter that doesn't look that dissimilar from this. One of the things I'll note is that this is going to be more expensive on a linear foot basis than it is in most areas of town to replace. The reason for that is because we've got asphalt on one side of the curb and gutter, which is fairly common, but we've got paver sidewalk on the back side of the curb and gutter, which is not as common, especially in most parts of town. We've got new curb and gutter, new paver sidewalk because we just built it. This area, it's about 40 years old. What we're actually going to have to do is not only tear out the curb and gutter, but also tear out about 2 feet of the sidewalk and 2 feet of the street in order to create the room to rebuild the curb and gutter. Then we'll have to rebuild the street and rebuild the sidewalk behind the curb and gutter to tie it all back together. So there's a lot more work involved with this curb and gutter replacement than is typically the case. The 75,000 may not be enough to get the entire block done. Should it not be, we've got a strategy in terms of what sections would be lower priority to leave out and save for a later date, so that we can focus on the most challenging sections that are also the ones that would be most disruptive to business. So that if there's a few sections that we can't complete, it would be the sections that would result in less business disruption if we did it a year from now or 2 years from now when downtown was opened, and it would be in a more limited geographic area. So with that, if we could advance the next slide. The recommendation is that council approve a budget amendment to increase the miscellaneous curb and gutter replacement project by $50,000 to increase the current $25,000 budget up to $75,000. If you take this action, this would be the last time that you as a council would see this project. The staff is in the process of getting quotes from local contractors to come in and do the work. If the funding's approved in the budget, then Jeff Lux, as the town manager, would have authority to, per our existing purchasing guidelines or ordinance, to award the contract, and we would move the work forward. The goal would be to complete the project by May 21. So with that, or as much of the project as the funding will allow. So with that, I'll stop.
Great. Thank you, Dan. And once again, we're going to open public comment, Truckee@townoftruckee.com or 530-428-6555. And just make sure you state your name if you do leave us a voice memo. So public comment is officially open. Any questions, starting with Vice Mayor Klostad?
Hi, Dan. Thanks for putting this together. Is the town's informal bid limit 75,000, or is that just specifically what you want to make available to spend?
Our informal bid limit is $100,000.
Okay.
For a project like this. And that's also the limit at which the town manager can award a contract if the money is in the budget without having to bring it back to the town council.
The 100,000.
The 100,000, yeah.
Okay. And so you suspect that this 75,000 won't be enough to cover the area that is rated?
The estimates we did suggest that the 75,000 will be adequate. The piece that was tough to estimate was the level of effort necessary to remove and replace the paver sidewalk. And some of that is going to be dictated by what we find when we do the demolition of the curb in that section of the paver sidewalk, and how much preparatory work is going to be necessary in the subgrade. And there's also a couple of the drainage inlets along this run that we need to do some work around. And when you dig that up is when you truly find out how complicated it is to put it back together. So there's some unknowns like that in our cost estimate. And that's the reason I was putting some caveats in. Our hope is that the 75,000 is enough to get the entire job done.
And then we would work within the usual 10% change order parameter. So another 75.
Well, if the budget that's approved by the council is 75,000, we would be
it would be 75,000.
We would, yeah, work the project to not exceed that amount.
Okay, good to know. All right, thank you.
I don't have any questions. Thank you, Dan.
No questions. Thank you.
Just a quick follow-up from what Anna was asking about. Dan, if it gets to the point in the 75,000 spent and there's another, 20 feet to go, how do you handle that?
We either exceed the budget and just do it, or we cut the work off. Yeah, so it's one of those. We typically don't like to exceed the budget without the council approving that, though.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the thought in my head is just do it, but I'll reserve that for our deliberation, I guess.
I was going to ask the exact same question. Why aren't we just doing it? Why aren't we? What would you need from us in terms of a contingency or something like that? Is there something that, I mean, it would seem stupid to stop at 20 feet or whatever it is, but it would seem, unless it's egregious, to just finish the project.
Yeah, I would agree. Again, we were trying to hit a balance between not spending an inordinate amount of money on the project and getting the bulk of the work done. So, if the council wanted to approve up to the town manager's authority in the budget, what we would still do is try to work the project towards the originally recommended $75,000 budget amount. And then if it looks like it's going to be more than that, you would be leaving Jeff with some flexibility to look at that along with the finance department and the other department heads to make the judgment as to whether it makes sense to just not do the entire project or to spend the extra money and leave it to the staff's, the combination of the department head staff's discretion to make that call.
Well, just to be clear, this isn't a general fund project. This is a Measure V project, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Any public comment come in on this item?
I don't know if there was public comment in advance. Was there, Dan?
None that I was aware of.
Okay, none has come in during this public comment time via email, text, or phone call.
Thank you, Jennifer. And we will close public comment at this time and bring it back for deliberation and action when any council member is ready. So same order, Vice Mayor Klofstad.
So thank you very much for bringing this forward. I think this is a great opportunity and kind of a good sign of we're thinking about how to create the silver linings from this crisis. We don't have any cars in town, so let's get this done while we're not going to be impacting business. I also think it's very appropriate to be spending the funds that are specifically dedicated to these types of projects, and they'll continue to reserve our general funds, so fiscal prudency there. And I'm hopeful that you'll get some very competitive bids. I know there's a lot of people out there that want to bid public works projects right now because we are considered essential services. So based on the bids that you received for the Coldstream Culvert, those were very competitive bids, 8 bidders, very close bidding range. So I think this is a great opportunity that you guys are taking advantage of. So thanks for doing this.
I am supportive of this. I think David brought up the question of the extra adding additional up to the town manager's threshold to approve it. Do we want to make a change on that as a group? I mean, to allow that, because I agree, I'd rather have a stop. I'd rather have finished it up, be done. So do we need to, how do we do that change? Do we need to add it to the recommendation? Is that all it is? As simple as that?
Yeah, I think if you wanted to make that change, you could take the $50,000 budget amendment amount and substitute in 75,000, which would bring the total project up to the town manager's authority.
But not to exceed $100,000 by adding the 75 and 25 together.
Yeah, instead of, the staff recommendation was to take the $25,000 budget, amend it to 75,000. You could choose to amend it to 100,000. And again, we would work internally with the finance department and the town manager so that if we can't get the whole project done for 75,000, you would ultimately leave it to Jeff's discretion as to spending that extra 25 or not. And I think we're hearing, or at least I'm hearing, a desire by the council to, just get the work done while we're out there.
That's all. The only change I would make to it is however we want to word it to allow whether we say 75,000 as the budget amount with an additional up to 25 to meet the town manager's authority threshold, and I think we should amend it that way and get this done. So, Mayor, that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Jessica?
I have nothing further to add. I agree with Tony. I think important to get it done. Jeff and I spoke about this also on my call earlier, and it'll be nice that once town is open and fully back in business, that it's going to help to, people will be able to enjoy kind of these nicer curbs and gutters. So it'll help with, at whatever level it can with the facade in the town.
I agree with all my colleagues. Anything that's going to continue to enhance our historic downtown, and this certainly is an improvement that will enhance downtown, even at a gutter level. So anyway, and I think Dan, I appreciate your thoughts about working towards the $75,000 budget. And in my mind, just sort of thinking of the additional 25 as a contingency if needed.
Do we need to give Kim Zurich a chance to chime in here, or should we make a motion without her?
Take care.
Fine, man. Yeah.
She's not chiming in, so
Here, I'll do my Kim impersonation.
Yeah.
No, I think it makes sense. The only thing I would say, I'm going to do my Kim impersonation. The only thing I would say is that I totally agree with where you're headed. We want to get the job done and finish it. It's a small amount of money. We just have to remember that we shouldn't be treating Measure V. This is a future admonition, not an admonition on this item. We shouldn't be treating Measure V and Measure R as somehow not general fund. Don't need to worry. Yes, they are earmarked for trails and roads respectively and have to be used for those purposes, but they're very flexible in terms of how we can use them for staff and other things. So we're going to be very cautious, just as we are with general fund dollars, on Measure R and V as well. So just a little kind of food for thought as we go into, the next 5 of these over the next couple of months.
Thank you, Jeff. Very well said. My concern is that we just pile on, and R and V are very much affected by our sales tax shortfalls. So every time we make a decision related to those, we make a decision that might affect our future ability to use them. And I'll just keep saying that over and over again. And of course, this is a great project, but we all just need to keep in mind that we're planning for the worst, hoping for the best, and we may not even care about this decision later on because we recovered wonderfully, but we also may not.
I just wanted to give you a chance there, Kim, so that you didn't feel that we weren't listening to you. We are hearing you. In this case, we might just not.
Yeah.
So I apologize. I think I agree at the very least with the rest of council on this one. It would seem if we're mobilized and out there, we should just get the job done and get it done. And I think we all know the budget implications are real. and we're going to make a lot of real decisions on those, and hopefully this one can help move us through. So with that, Council Member Abrams, would you mind making a motion on this one?
Sure. Let me just scroll up. I move that we authorize a budget amendment to increase the miscellaneous curb and gutter replacement project C1508 funding by $50,000 with an optional additional 25,000. Is that
75 funding by
for
70
total funding? Okay, so we will increase by 75,000 for a total funding amount of 100,000 for fiscal year 1920. I just do my arithmetic on the spot. Okay.
Can we get a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. That was Tony. And Tony seconding. Judy, that's the call.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Klofstad.
Aye.
Councilmember Commendatore.
Aye.
Councilmember Abrams.
Aye.
Councilmember Tierman.
Aye.
Mayor Pallavi.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Very efficient meeting. I appreciate that. And thanks to everybody for tuning in. We're going to move on to item number 8, being council member reports in this crazy time. So we'll go opposite order this time, starting with council member Tierman.
Yeah, this is going to sound kind of funny, but I started to attend a workshop, a virtual workshop on the downtown specific plan, which opened up on Thursday last week, April 23rd. Really well done. And what's nice about it is there's a period of time, 10 days or so, where you can go back onto it, kind of save your place. And I would encourage everybody to take a look at the Truckee 2040 website, which is all about the general plan and the update. And this one specifically focused on the downtown historic district. So that was one thing. Then I attended another, this was a webinar, but it was relevant, I think, to our community and happened to be relevant to my business as well. It was a group out of Bethesda, Maryland, that put on a nationwide seminar on the impacts of the health crisis on mountain resort communities and mountain resort real estate. A group called RC Elco, Robert Charles Lesser Company. They're one of the sort of preeminent real estate analyst groups in the nation. So that was very well attended. Jeff Brown, Tahoe Mountain Realty, was one of the speakers, along with several others. And then finally, just along with all of you, have been participating in our kind of weekly COVID call updates. And that's it for me.
Thank you. Jessica.
Yeah, like David just mentioned, I attended, I think, the last COVID call. As my fellow council members know, I've been in a bereavement due to the sudden and unexpected loss of my father, which it blindsided me a little bit. So I've been more focusing on family and trying to stay with that strong mental health and being a positive member of our community. So I look forward to getting re-involved as I'm re-entering normal life. Normal life as far as COVID-19 anyway.
I have, much like everybody else, all the same stuff, calls, those sort of things, and then a variety of other things we've been doing or I've been doing. But a few highlights. Nevada County COVID-19 Business Task Force call, which has been interesting. Mostly on the west side, a few of us on the east side in the call, but definitely two different sides of the world when you hear the west side talk versus the east side. Video call, conference call I was involved with Congressman Tom McClintock. Truckee River Basin Water Group has we met for our first virtual meeting. That was actually worked out pretty well, and it was pretty efficient. It was really, I think we accomplished quite a few things. And then as well as all the various interviews, radio, and other things, outreach with community members, calls, emails, and much like everybody else, the list goes on. And in all that, trying to actually run a business and have my own problems I got to deal with. So, but we're moving forward. So things have been pretty good. So.
All right. Well, all the same, everybody's insane. I think the volume of information has really not subsided, especially if you choose to read those League of California City updates and all of the attachments, which are very informative, but you can really go down rabbit holes on those. I really enjoyed my radio interview last week. On 101.5, JD was nice enough to have me on for Earth Day. So that was the highlight of my week. And then the other highlight was talking with Sierra Business Council and other entities about their resilience fund and getting that kicked off and trying to support that as best as I can as a community leader. So in all, it was a week of hope and potential opportunity, which was a very welcome shift.
Yeah, I agree. Lots. The messages definitely have not subsided. I would agree with you, Vice Mayor Klovstad, and certainly more positive. Still a lot of concern and a lot of action, and I've been doing my best to respond to everybody. And I do appreciate all of the messages that come through. And if I don't have exact answers for you, I do apologize to the public, right now. But I've been doing my best. Lots of emails, lots of meetings, definitely lots of phone calls. And then in my side role here as mayor, which is also slightly turned into communications assistant for the town. I've been on 2 news broadcasts, one down in San Francisco last week, and then another one I was on a morning news station in San Francisco. I was on an evening news station in Reno. I had a wonderful opportunity to be on NPR's Insight. They do Mayor Mondays, and myself and the mayor of Chico were on this past Monday, and their recordings of all of this, if anybody wants to see it. But it was really interesting. That was my first time on that program, and it was great to hear her voice actually over the phone, and then also to be talking to her because it is a program I tend to listen to sometimes. Truckee was also featured in the San Francisco Chronicle. Couple pictures, couple quotes, both from the chief and myself. Started on the front page of Sunday's Chronicle and then went a little bit deeper as well. And that was it, kind of touching on a number of issues. But in general, I think the more that we can just speak for ourselves and get our messaging out there, it's a positive at this point. And it's been a much more regional touch, I feel like, over the last 2 weeks. Just a quick community service update, but Moonshine Inc. is hosting what they've been calling their Tahoe Talks tomorrow morning. And if you're interested in joining that, they plan to have the 2 county health directors, Amy Sisson and Ken Cutler, along with Harry Weiss from the hospital, is the focus of that web meeting. And you can email Moonshine Inc. to get a invite or to get the links to it. We've all been on with JD Haas and 101.5, and I was just gonna give him a very public thank you, both from us and our community. He's been a wonderful source of news, inspiration, education, most importantly, and also hope and fun as well. I think he's really tied in. So every morning, 8 to 10, JD takes over 101.5, and we've all participated. I believe I'm going back on tomorrow morning, actually. And just a big shout out to all of our local media who's been doing a really great job getting the facts out there. So just a big thank you to them. And another big thanks to just our internal communications team has really pivoted and done a great job with the Town of Truckee website and the Town of Truckee Facebook page, making sure that we have all the information out there. That is it for me. So with that, we are at 6:15. And unless anybody has anything else, no, we're good. Well, I'm going to adjourn this meeting officially. Here is our hammer. And we look forward to seeing you all in a couple of weeks. I don't have the date in front of me. I'll get it quickly.
May 12th?
May 12th. Thank you. May 12th. We'll let you know what time. And we will most likely be virtual again. So thanks, everybody. Hang in there. Stay at home. Be well. We'll see you on the flip side. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.